Gwen Shamblin built a multi-million-dollar empire by telling Christians that God wanted them to be thin. Her program, The Way Down Workshop, sold over 1 million copies of its flagship book and spread to 30,000 churches across the United States. She founded her own church, Remnant Fellowship, in Brentwood, Tennessee, and demanded absolute devotion from everyone who walked through the doors. Members of her congregation were convicted of beating their 8-year-old son to death. She defended them publicly and helped pay for their legal defense. But on May 29, 2021, just minutes after taking off from Smyrna Airport outside Nashville, the private plane carrying Gwen Shamblin and 6 other church leaders crashed into Percy Priest Lake. There were no survivors. This is how a diet program became a church, how a church became a cage, and how it all ended at the bottom of a Tennessee lake. We put together a free checklist of 12 warning signs of a high-control religious group. If you want it, it is in the description below. Gwen Shamblin was born in Memphis, Tennessee in 1955 and raised in a Church of Christ family. She earned a degree in dietetics and a master's in food and nutrition from the University of Tennessee. She spent 5 years as an instructor at the University of Memphis and worked with the state health department. By every measure, she was a credentialed professional. She knew the science of nutrition, and she believed, deeply, that the science alone was not enough. In 1986, Shamblin founded the Way Down Workshop out of a small retail space in Memphis. The premise was simple and, to millions of American Christians, irresistible. Overeating, she taught, was not a metabolic problem. It was a spiritual one. The answer was not calorie counting or portion control. The answer was God. Stop bowing down to the refrigerator, she said, and start bowing down to the Lord. Eat only when you feel true hunger. Transfer your desire for food into desire for God, and the weight will fall off. The program did not require exercise. It did not restrict food groups. It did not involve weigh-ins. It asked only one thing: total surrender to God's will, as interpreted by Gwen Shamblin. And it worked. Or at least, people believed it did. The Way Down Workshop exploded. By 1994, it was offered in 600 churches across 35 states. By 1996, 5,000 churches. By 1998, the program had more than 250,000 participants in over 21,000 locations across Europe, Canada, and every state in America. In 1997, Shamblin published The Way Down Diet through Doubleday. It became a million seller. She appeared on Larry King Live, 20 over 20, The View, and Good Housekeeping. She was named Christian Business Leader of the Year. And then, Gwen Shamblin did something that changed everything. She decided that the churches hosting her program were not good enough, that mainstream Christianity had been corrupted, that she needed to build something pure. In 1999, Shamblin founded Remnant Fellowship Church in Franklin, Tennessee. The name itself was a declaration. Remnant, the faithful few. Everyone else had gotten it wrong. She later moved the church to a 40-acre property in Brentwood that she purchased herself. The building was constructed with her own donated funds. And inside those walls, Gwen Shamblin was not just the pastor. She was, according to former members, the unquestioned voice of God. Former members who spoke to investigators, journalists, and the producers of the HBO documentary The Way Down described a church where every aspect of life was controlled: what you ate, who you married, how you raised your children, how you spent your money. Members who gained weight were publicly humiliated. Members who questioned Shamblin's authority were shamed in front of the congregation. Leaving the church meant losing your entire social network, because Remnant Fellowship had systematically replaced every outside relationship with church-approved ones. Shamblin rejected the doctrine of the Trinity, a position that led many evangelical churches to drop her Way Down program entirely. Thomas Nelson Publishers canceled her next book. She was removed from the Women of Faith website, but none of that slowed her down. She had her own church now. She did not need their approval. And then, in October of 2003, an 8-year-old boy named Joseph Smith died. Joseph's parents, Joseph and Sonia Smith, were members of Remnant Fellowship. They lived in Mableton, Georgia, a suburb of Atlanta. Prosecutors would later present evidence that the Smiths had beaten Joseph repeatedly, locked him inside a small wicker box held shut with bungee cords, and confined him to a closet for hours at a time. The county medical examiner concluded that Joseph died from blunt force trauma to the head, the result of what was described as acute and chronic abuse. Firefighters who responded to the home said his body was covered in bruises. In a recorded phone call played during the trial, Sonia Smith told Gwen Shamblin that she had followed the advice of church leader Ted Anger. She said she spanked Joseph on the back of his thighs and locked him in his empty room with nothing but a Bible for 3 days. Sonia told Shamblin it had turned the boy's behavior around. Shamblin's response, captured on the recording, was to call it a miracle. In February 2007, Joseph and Sonia Smith were convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Authorities had raided the Remnant Fellowship Church in 2004 as part of the investigation. Former members told reporters that church teachings included discussion of corporal punishment and that glue sticks were commonly used to discipline children. One former member said glue sticks stuck out of diaper bags in the church aisles. Shamblin admitted publicly that she believed in spankings and had used a wooden spoon on her own children, but she denied that the church was responsible for Joseph's death. She attended the Smiths' trial as a supporter. The church paid for their legal defense, and after the conviction, Remnant Fellowship launched a website called The Smiths Are Innocent, soliciting donations for the couple's appeal. That free checklist is in the description if you have not grabbed it yet. Through all of this, Shamblin's personal life told its own story. She had been married to David Shamblin since 1978, 40 years. David had been involved in the early days of Waydown, but over time he disappeared from public church life. He did not attend services. He did not appear at church events. Former members speculated that a man with a master's in divinity was uncomfortable watching his wife turn religion into a business empire. For years, Shamblin had told the women of Remnant Fellowship that divorce was not an option. Even in cases of abuse, even in cases of infidelity, you stay, you obey, you submit. In 2018, Gwen Shamblin filed for divorce from David after 40 years of marriage. Her son Michael later told investigators that Shamblin had been carrying on a relationship with a man named Joe Lara while still married. Within weeks of the divorce being finalized, Shamblin announced her engagement. She married Joe Lara on August 18, 2018, in a lavish church ceremony. Joe Lara was an actor from San Diego. His most notable role was playing Tarzan in a 1989 television movie and a follow-up series in the 1990s. After his acting career ended, he moved to Nashville to pursue country music. It did not take off. He was working as a handyman when he met Shamblin. Former members who appeared in The Way Down said they believed Lara was drawn to Shamblin's wealth and influence. The church had its own recording studio, which Lara used to continue making music. Members who questioned the marriage, who pointed out the obvious contradiction between Shamblin's teachings on divorce and her own actions, were expelled from the church. The contradiction was simply erased. Gwen Shamblin had spent decades telling women to suffer through their marriages, and then she left hers the moment she found someone she liked better. May 29, 2021 was a Saturday morning in Tennessee. Gwen Shamblin Lara, Joe Lara, Shamblin's son-in-law Brandon Hanna, and two married couples from Remnant Fellowship leadership, Jennifer and David Martin, and Jessica and Jonathan Walters, boarded a Cessna Citation at Smyrna Airport. They were headed to Palm Beach, Florida. Joe Lara was at the controls. He held a commercial pilot certificate, but the conditions that morning were not simple. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft entered clouds. Flight tracking data later showed the plane made a series of erratic heading changes, climbing and descending unpredictably. The aircraft reached 3,000 feet, then dropped, then climbed again, then entered a steep descending left turn. At 10:55 a.m., 2 minutes and 1 second after departure, the plane struck the surface of Percy Priest Lake at high speed, nose first. A fisherman on the lake later told investigators he heard what he thought was a low-flying military jet before he saw the aircraft hit the water in a straight-down attitude. All 7 people on board were killed instantly. Recovery crews spent days pulling wreckage from the shallow reservoir near the Fate Sanders boat ramp. In March 2023, the National Transportation Safety Board released its final report. The cause was the pilot's loss of airplane control during climb due to spatial disorientation. Joe Lara had experienced what investigators call a somatogravic illusion. The acceleration of the aircraft made him perceive that the plane was pitching upward when it was actually descending. He could not see outside. He did not effectively use his instruments. And by the time the aircraft entered its final dive, there was no recovering. There was no mechanical failure. The wreckage showed no signs of engine problems or structural issues. It was pilot error in instrument conditions. That was the finding. That was the cause. The church Shamblin built did not die with her. Remnant Fellowship continues today under the leadership of her daughter, Elizabeth Shamblin Hanna, whose husband Brandon died in the same crash. The Way Down Workshop still sells courses online. A subscription to Way Down TV costs $19.99 a month. The website still carries Shamblin's name. The message has not changed, but the exposure did not stop. The HBO documentary The Way Down, released in 5 parts across 2021 and 2022, brought former members forward who had been afraid to speak for years. They described a church where obedience was everything, where questioning the leader was treated as rebellion against God, and where leaving meant losing your family, your friends, and your entire world. Gwen Shamblin's story is not simply about one woman who went too far. It is about what happens when health, faith, and authority are fused into a single person. She told people that God wanted them thin. She told people that God spoke through her. She told people to stay in their marriages no matter what, and then she left her own. She told people to discipline their children into total obedience, and when a child died, she defended the parents and paid their legal bills. And on a Saturday morning in May, she boarded a small plane with the people who believed in her most, and none of them came back. If these stories matter to you, subscribe and become a member. We cover the rise and fall of the institutions that shaped American Christianity, and we are just getting started. Gwen Shamblin spent 25 years telling people that the body is a temple, that hunger is holy, that God rewards the disciplined and punishes the indulgent. On May 29, 2021, her temple and everything she built inside it disappeared beneath the surface of a lake outside Nashville. The Way Down Workshop still has a website. Remnant Fellowship still holds services. But the woman who told 30,000 churches that she had the answer is gone, and the questions she left behind are not about weight loss. They are about what we are willing to surrender to someone who says they speak for God.